Hi friends, my name is Al, or Little Star Nerd, and welcome to another installment in my series, Make It Gay, where I take famous and classic pieces of art and I make them gay. I realized that I haven't done a Make It Gay since June, so, it feels like it's time to do another one. But it's also spooky season. Halloween is one of my favorite holidays. I'm having a great time this spooky season. So I wanted this Make It Gay to be reflective of that. So I searched high and low for an appropriately spooky painting to make gay, and I found one. Today we will be painting Summer Moon by Alfred James Dewey. We're gonna talk about the selection of this painting and my decisions and stuff later in the video. This video is also special because Holbein sent me their acrylic gouache for me to try out. I asked them if I could have some and they said yes. So I will be using this in this video. It's like a new medium for me, so that's exciting. So without further ado, grab a snack, grab whatever art you're working on, and let's do some art together. Let's have a little art date. Let's go. So this is not a full video of reviewing these paints, but it is the first time I'm using them on the channel, so let me give you a quick rundown of my thoughts. In a recent video, I tried to revive my very dried out jelly gouache, and I ended that video by saying I was going to start building up a collection of tube gouache, and I asked for some recommendations. A few people recommended Holbein acrylic gouache tubes, and I know that those in general are loved by a lot of artists. I see so many artists use them, swear by them, they're very popular. And I love Holbein's artist gouache, it's my favorite gouache, but it is pretty expensive. So I thought the Holbein acrylic gouache would be a really safe bet. I was sure I would like them. I already know I like the brand, I love the way the gouache works, why wouldn't I like the acrylic gouache? So I reached out to Holbein and asked if I could try some of their acrylic gouache. They said yes, so I picked out some colors. When I tried the Winsor & Newton gouache, I picked out colors with the plan of being able to mix a lot of colors. I tried to pick primaries, I tried to be intentional, and that did not end well for me. So for these paints, I decided I was just going to pick colors I liked, colors that called to me, colors that made a pretty palette. And I did, and I love them. I think that the colors go so well together. I love the palette itself. I keep pulling out the tubes to look at them because I think the selection just is so pretty. I love them a lot. And then right after I received the gouache, I found that I somehow already own a pack of acrylic gouache, Holbein acrylic gouache of a mixing primary set. And I am genuinely so confused because I do not remember owning these. I don't remember how or when I got these or if I've ever used them before. I must have used them at some point. But I don't know. I don't remember when I got these. I don't remember if I've ever used them. I'm very confused. But anyways, it worked out really well because I had the primaries that I would need, and I had this beautiful color palette of other colors to supplement that. And these colors actually worked perfectly for the Make It Gay painting I had picked out. They just matched so perfectly. I thought it was uncanny. I was looking at the tubes, and then I looked at the painting I had picked out, and when I picked out this palette, I had not determined which painting I would be doing for the Make It Gay. So I looked at them and I was like, huh, that's crazy that these match so well. So I decided to use them for this piece. And it was also a great medium to go with because Holbein very kindly included some large tubes of black and white in the package, so I had everything I needed. It's been a few days since I've done this sketch, and I'm really hesitant to start. Something feels super off about it. I think the heads are simultaneously too big and too small. I hate all of this anatomy, and I feel so the anatomy is strange. In the original, the anatomy is really strange. Her torso is really long, but it makes sense in this style. It doesn't make sense in my sketch. And I just haven't been excited about this painting because I don't like the sketch. So I think I want to double check that my grid is right. And then if it is, then my plan is to shorten all of this, bring this table, the wall up, and cut off some of this because I feel the composition is way too bottom heavy and this is not going to be detailed at all. So I want to double check everything. But it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. How that's crazy. Look how long that is. I don't know about this one. Okay, we're just gonna have to go with that. This painting is actually not the first time I'm using these paints. I didn't want the first time I used them to be, an important piece. So I did a quick sketchbook painting with them and had an okay time. Not a bad time at all, just they weren't as opaque as I thought they would be, specifically the white. I don't know. I was trying to cover up a very dark spot in my sketchbook, so I don't know if that's on me. I don't know. Maybe there's only a certain amount of opacity I can expect. You know what I mean? It was a very dramatic thing that I was trying to cover up. So I don't know that I can be upset that it didn't work. But yeah, it was an okay time. I enjoyed using them. I really like the colors. I had a good time in my sketchbook. No major complaints at all. If you don't know the difference between gouache and acrylic gouache, they're functionally the same, but acrylic gouache can't be reactivated. So once you put it down on the paper and let it dry, it's staying there. It's not going anywhere. Historically speaking, reactivation has never been an issue for me with gouache paints, but very recently, it's actually been really bad and driving me crazy. So I was excited to do this piece without having to deal with any of that. And honestly, thinking about it now, it's probably a really good thing for me to use paints that don't reactivate, because almost every time I do a gouache painting, I'll get water droplets on important finished sections and mess it up at the last minute, almost every time. So it's good that with these paints, I won't have to worry about any of that. But yeah, they work just like regular gouache, they just don't reactivate with water. And shocker, I really like the paints. What a surprise. I loved the color palette I picked, I loved the way they mixed, I loved the matte finish, I loved the way the paints interacted on the paper. They layered really, really well, just overall a pleasure to work with. I genuinely can't think of any issues I had with these paints. They worked the way I wanted them to, nothing unpredictable happened, they were great. I definitely see why people love them so much. I also, they have so many color options that I can see, if I ever one day can, just own every tube. I can see using them straight from the tube a lot, which I very rarely do. The colors are super beautiful, the pigment is really rich. Like I said, they interacted really well. It was the not having to deal with the reactivating was really nice. I never felt like I was overworking an area, just overall, great to work with. So now let's talk really quickly about the original painting because there's just not much to say. This is based on Summer Moon by Alfred James Dewey, an American painter born in 1874. No idea when this painting was done. He did a lot of paintings seemingly in the same location, like Crescent Moon and Harvest Moon. He also had a lot of paintings that were along that same spooky vein with crazy red lighting. There were some that were honestly more spooky, but this specific painting just called to me very strongly. I loved her profile being silhouetted by the moon. I was so in love with that. I thought the overall atmosphere was just so perfect. But anyways, there's no information on this painting, its meaning, its subjects, and besides his birth and death year, I couldn't even find much information on the artist himself. Like always, I'll link my sources down below, but really there's not much to be known about him. Okay, anyways, why did I pick this painting? I looked for spooky or dark romantic paintings for a long time, and I found quite a few contenders, but nothing was really calling to me, I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking for, but I knew I'd know it when I saw it, and I just wasn't seeing it. And then I came across this painting, I think by complete accident, and just, I knew. Like I said, the moon, the silhouette, there's this eerie vibe to it all, even in the original, and I just loved it. It's supposed to be Summer Moon, but to me it feels very autumnal with the color selection, the clothing, and the silhouette and the moon. It feels spooky to me. I think it's just perfect for exactly, it's exactly what I'm going for. So I started thinking about the piece and how I was going to make it gay and change it, right? And I almost immediately hit a roadblock. There are a lot of things I could see maybe doing, but nothing was coming very naturally. I was super happy with the sketches. I loved the way both girls looked, but unfortunately, I don't think the faces quite translated the way I wanted them to with paint. The thing about this stuff is when I rely on just paint, I can't use line work, and I can never get the paintbrush sharp and thin enough, a lot of those details end up being lost, so I was pretty disappointed by the end to see that some of those things just didn't translate. For example, the girl on the left, I knew I wanted her to have a hooked nose, and the girl on the right, I knew I wanted to be Chinese or Chinese American. And I feel like my sketches captured that pretty well. I based the photo of the girl on the right on a photo that I found when looking for Chinese American hairstyles in the 20s. And I really, really liked it. It had the exact atmosphere that I want, that photo reference was so perfect. It had the emotion and the vibe and the angle, and I thought it was really beautiful, and I really liked the sketch. Unfortunately, I don't think it fully translated, but you know what? I do plan on scanning this photo and like fixing those things a bit in Photoshop because I think it should be easy. It just needs a few tweaks, so hopefully I can get that fixed. Another thing that I really didn't think about is with the lighting effect, it definitely changes kind of the lines and the shapes that your eye sees. Even though that same silhouette is technically still there, like the outline of her face is the same, the shapes that we see are totally changed by the contrast and the light and the dark. And so her silhouette looks way, way different. And I didn't really take that into consideration. And I don't know that I could have worked around that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I could have planned that differently because the silhouette lighting was very, very important to the piece. But it is always really difficult when working on these gouache pieces, no matter how large a scale they are, really. Like this, for me, this is pretty big, but the faces are still really small. And it's really hard to get in with those really, really tiny details and make it exactly the way I want it to be. So the sketch is always a little bit lost, and I always kind of go in knowing that's gonna happen. But it sucks when things are so drastically changed from the sketch because, like I said, I really liked the sketch. Anyways, I had my girls figured out, so I needed to figure out how to make this spooky. My problem was I didn't want it to be Halloween-y. This piece needs to be able to work year-round, not just when it's October. So I couldn't add anything gimmicky, so I was kind of circling a drain with it. I would add a knife, then think it's stupid and take it out. Let's give them masquerade masks, but that will take away all the important detail of their faces, so never mind. Let's make one a ghost, but I don't know if I can believably achieve that, especially with gouache, so that won't work. I brainstormed for a while, but ultimately decided I'd have to let the inherent spookiness of the piece speak for itself and not add a bunch of silly, unnecessary stuff. I was pretty disappointed. I wanted to be able to make changes to the piece. I felt like it was a bit of a test of my own creativeness. So it was frustrating to feel like I couldn't think for myself or make any changes or add anything. But there's a reason that I picked this reference photo, and I do think it's spooky. So I think it really is just a matter of letting like the piece speak for itself, you know, like the moon is the whole point of why I wanted to do this piece, and so I should let it, you know, shine, you know? Like I do wish I could have added something a little bit spookier, but I guess it's spooky enough. I think it's certainly spooky enough for year round, like it's not too spooky. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Is it spooky or not? But anyways, I did make some changes. First of all, I switched up the composition just a teeny bit. I wanted to give the moon way more room to, you know, be the moon without the branches covering it. So I think I made it a bit wider and gave our girls a bit more of a frame rather than a background. I also changed the sitting woman's dress to a black dress, something a bit more gothic. I think to find the reference, I googled like 1910 or 20s gothic formal dress or something like that, but I am not at all confident that this dress is actually from either of those eras, but whatever. She's in black, she's covered in lace. Overall, I think much darker and vibier than the weird purple ugly smock thing she wears in the original. I was definitely trying to lean into the 20s vibe, but there's also not a lot of context clues for the time period, and I didn't want the clothing to be super detailed. I was really banking on, you know, blocking it a lot, blocking a lot in with shadow, so there wasn't much space to work in details of the era, so I wasn't too worried about her dress being inaccurate. I was also banking on using a lot of shadow just because the painting itself isn't very detailed, and I wasn't gonna try to put in a bunch of detail all by myself. I also adjusted their hands so they'd be kind of like reaching for each other a bit. You know when people like touch pinkies or just barely graze fingertips and it's very romantic and charged, and you know that they're restraining themselves for whatever reason, like in shows. I wanted that vibe. I'm not sure I achieved that emotion, but I do think that connection of their hands actually does add to the composition and hopefully does make it a bit more romantic. I didn't love that in the original they were just standing and staring at each other, so I immediately knew I wanted to have them touch in some way. I also added lilies to the bottom. I looked up flowers that symbolize death, and lilies were top of the list. I did not do any additional research. I just Googled flowers that mean death, and I saw lilies. I don't know if there's a specific color. I don't know if there are better options, but I went with lilies. It's super minor and honestly pointless to add them. I just thought that the bottom of the painting could use some spicing up, and that little bit of symbolism is kind of fun, you know? Especially because the bottom half of the painting would be so undetailed with basically just her legs and a wall, and I was banking so much on using shadow, the entire bottom half of the painting would be shadow, like would be one dark color, so I wanted something to break it up a bit, and I think it worked really well. This piece definitely gave me some struggles. The original is somewhat impressionistic, I guess. I don't know. I'm bad at identifying art genre styles or whatever, but it's you know, it's not super detailed, which is what I'm used to. When I do make it gaze, they tend to be of paintings that are of a genre that applaud insane amounts of accuracy and detail and are usually huge in size, so referencing something like this was different for sure. When looking at the original, I really didn't see any issues with it. It wasn't until I made a grid for it and did the sketch that I realized how insane the anatomy is. Like, when you look at the painting, it seems fine, but oh my god, their bodies are so long. Like they're really strangely, like her torso and the heads were constantly felt either too big or too small. The torsos were so long, her legs were so long. And so I had left the sketch alone for a few days. I was way too scared to work on the painting because I didn't like the sketch and I knew I was setting myself up for a bad painting if I had a bad sketch. So I had to take some time and come back with fresh eyes and had to decide, you know, I gotta go off book. Gotta go my own way, trust my gut, and not directly follow the original. And I'm glad I did. The semi-fuzzy style of the original also threw me off in the sense of like, some details I just couldn't figure out. The hand resting on the wall, I had no idea how to paint that. The wall itself was really confusing. I was a little nervous to translate Alfred's trees into my own painting. Even things like the sky and the water were difficult to do because his had so much texture because of his style, with all sorts of different colors and lots of thick brush strokes. But I don't paint like that, especially not with gouache. So this major element of the painting was pretty much completely taken away, which I think did kind of change the overall tone of the painting. This Make It Gay was really interesting for me because a lot of it was my own work. It was way more stylized than I normally go, I guess. I didn't notice until about halfway, but I looked down and I was like, huh, these portraits are very, very stylized. You know, they don't look realistic at all. Normally, because the original paintings are, like I said, tend to be very realistic and hyper detailed, I try to match whatever style that I'm doing. And because this one was so impressionistic and it didn't have a lot of information to give me, I went very, very stylized because I wasn't, you know, directly referencing anything. I don't dislike that. It was just very, you know, like different. It took a lot more, not necessarily brain power, because I don't think I noticed as I was doing it that it was very different. But I also don't know that this is the way I want to continue doing Make It Gays. But it was definitely a bit of a benchmark, landmark Make It Gay for me because I had to do so much of a style change, which I don't think I've really done that in a Make It Gay before. And so it was a lot of my own brain power, I guess. I also think it's the most I've really changed a piece. I could be wrong, but I think it is. I didn't really notice, but I guess this one was very much a blank slate. You know what I mean? Like this was a very open-ended one for me. Normally, there's a few things that I tweak. This one felt more like a prompt and a starting place, and I ended up somewhere very different. I mean, it doesn't look that different, but it's definitely like, I think the most I've gone off path, which was super interesting. Like I said, I don't know if that's how I want to continue it. There's a purpose to these Make It Gays, and it's to insert queer people, like I want to be seen, you know, in these classical famous paintings. So I don't know if I want to change them that much because that's not really the point, but I don't hate it either. There are some areas of the painting I'm not thrilled with. The hands are definitely weak points for one. I'm still not in love with the anatomy, but I think it does work for the painting, so I'm really not worried about it. You know, it doesn't upset me. It bugs me a teeny tiny bit. There's a patchy, like yellowy spot of the sky around the woman on the right's face because I ran out of paint and had to remix and just couldn't get the right color. But what bothers me most is that it just doesn't look like a nighttime painting. I ended up mixing colors that were way lighter than I thought, and it looks more like a sun than it does a moon. This should be super easy to edit and fix, like I can just mess with the contrast and whatever. So I'm definitely gonna do that, but it still really, really bothers me that the painting is too bright. Because like that was like the point of the overall piece, you know, was a spooky nighttime thing, and now it's not that anymore. But whatever, like I said, it can be edited. Not the end of the world. I still think it turned out pretty well. There we go, I've got another Make It Gay under my belt. I am actually super happy with how this turned out. It's not quite exactly what I wanted it to be in every way, but I think anything that kind of got messed up, I can fix in editing for prints. However, I'm not 1000% sure I want to make prints of this, so please let me know if this is something that you want prints of. Maybe I'll just make like a few, I don't know. But yeah, the acrylic gouache were a pleasure to work with. I had a lot of fun. This painting went way easier than I thought it would. And I'm just so excited to have a spooky edition of a Make It Gay in my collection. Let me know if there are any paintings you have in mind for me to make gay. And besides that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a great time. Hope you're excited for Halloween. Let me know if you have any plans. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, the whole shebang. You know what to do. Go water your plants, buy some Halloween candy, and go do some art.